Hello YouTube and welcome to What the Math. In today's video I'm going to be trying to attempt to create an SSTO, a first version of an SSTO in Kerbal Space Program version 1.02. Now all of the previous models we've used before and all of the previous videos I've made about SSTOs are now defunct. They no longer work, and I'll show you an example of what I used to use that no longer really works. So let's just make a really simple SSTO just to show you why it's now a lot more difficult to get into space on a single stage to orbit vehicle. So the models I used before had a nuclear engine in the middle, then you would add ramjets, these particular whiplash turbo ramjet engines for the atmospheric propulsion. Then you would add a lot of ram intakes. I like to make them pretty. Oh, that's not pretty at all. And finally add as many intakes as you can possibly fit on the craft, because we used to use something called air hogging. It was a technique that a lot of people used to basically use and abuse the atmospheric engines as much as possible and essentially get to space on the cheap side. Now I used to use this a lot of the times, and I used this with both nuclear engines and also ion engines, and it worked quite well in everything up to I think version 1.0. However, so let's just see what happens. So essentially we have a nuclear engine in the middle that is supposed to get us into orbit. Not get us into orbit, but circularize our orbit once we get to a certain height using these turbojet engines that should be able to function at a very high altitude. So we're going to try to air hog as much as possible, but this is in version 1.02. So from what I have discovered, and I'll show you in a second, it doesn't work very well anymore. And of course, for safety, we're gonna smack a little parachute right on top here, because safety is our priority, right everyone, right? Alright, so put a little landing struts here, and let's see how this flies. Now this type of a craft was absolutely awesome to use in the earlier alpha and also in the beta version of the game. However, in this version, because of all of the additions to the atmospheric effects here, it is a lot more difficult to use. So yes, it is flying quite well now, and it is getting up to the upper atmosphere, but let's see what happens. So first of all, early on you'll notice that speeds at the lower ground are quite intense, and you can easily lose control of your craft as well. So I'm going to be very gently turning sideways here, because I'm going to try to air hog, but see, it's not even turning that well anymore. I may actually have to... Oh boy. Oh boy. And now we're gonna start burning down. So this is actually what the main problem is now. You start burning your ship and a lot of parts get destroyed if you try to air hog. And the thing is, here we go. This is where air hogging becomes really not efficient. Look at that. Look at my speed. I'm already losing speed. And essentially, not only speed, but you actually start losing a lot of the TWR as well, really early. And no matter how hard you try now, you can't actually air hog anymore. Even if you decrease the throttle, which I'm doing right now, it doesn't really do anything. And there is some air left. It should be doing something, but it doesn't do anything. So air hogging seems to have been removed. It's no longer possible. It's no longer feasible. And you essentially have to come up with something else. But yeah, obviously I can enable my nuclear engine now. But unfortunately, it's not going to be enough to get me anywhere. It won't be enough to get me into the orbit, or even save me from crashing down into the ground, which is coming up really soon. But nevertheless, we're not going to give up. We're going to try to get as much speed as possible, and we're going to see how fast we'll be going with this old school design. So beautiful. Look at how gorgeous it is. It's like sci-fi version of SSTO. Now I already know what's going to happen, but yes, we are going to be crashing, because we already are. Actually no, not yet, but right about now we're going to start losing altitude. There we go. We just passed our apoapsis, and no matter how hard I try now, I will not be able to escape into the orbit, or basically escape the outer atmosphere, because my TWR is unfortunately too low. It's only 0.4, and I don't really have that much fuel left. There's only 500 meters per second fuel left. But let's see what happens as we try to come down back to the surface of the planet, and there's actually a very high chance we might also destroy a few parts. I know these parts right here, these RAM air takes, often get destroyed by the burning sensation that we're about to feel. Although it's actually not due to friction, it's actually due to sudden change of pressure that we're about to experience very, very, very soon as we're coming down from this non-existent orbit. And this is what it looks like from the little window inside the capsule for Jebediah Kerman. If you ever look at his face here, he's very excited, even though the mission is not going so well. And good news, everyone, that's why I brought the parachute, because I knew things would not be going well. Well, we're definitely crashing now, and I may actually have to start planning my descent now. Now let's see what gets destroyed. So this is actually a new thing you have to remember if you're using the... oh boy. If you're using an SSTO design, or if you're actually planning to take these things into space and to other planets. The SSTO here is going to start losing a lot of components. So first we'll lose these in a second. Any second now. And so in other words, you do have to bring air brakes or try to plan out the descent a lot more efficiently. Oh wow, I actually did not lose them this time. I almost always lose them when I do this type of descent. And so now we can start trying, we can try to level out, see if we can. My parachute is a gun and things are what? Okay. Yeah, that's well, luckily this was water. So I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's fine. He's just swimming underwater. All right. So this design did not work very well. Let's see if we can change this. So now instead of using the nuclear engines or the ion engines to get into the upper orbit, you actually have to come up with a completely different strategy, completely different technique, and use completely different engines. Now you can obviously still use the Rapier engines because they are good for both atmosphere and space, because they're actually designed to be both atmospheric engines, and then they automatically switch to the I believe it's called closed mode, where they start using rocket fuel to get into space. Now this is something that you can use if nothing else works, but unfortunately they're not very powerful or not super powerful, and they're also not that efficient compared to the design I'm about to show you. So what I actually discovered is that it's a lot more beneficial to use not Rapier engine, but this right here, toroidal aerospike liquid fuel engine that I'm sure nobody has used before, because it was just totally useless. Okay, it wasn't totally useless, but before in the beta version there were just other alternatives that were much better. But now this is why it's actually useful. First of all, it's a little bit lighter. It's 500 kilograms lighter than Rapier engine, and secondly, it has a much more efficient vacuum, whatchamacallit, ISP, basically impulse. In other words, it wastes less fuel than Rapier engine in a vacuum. So in a vacuum, Rapier engine has ISP of 305. This one here has 340. That's actually really high. It's on par with engines like Spark liquid fuel engine, or my favorite Terrier liquid fuel engine, which has 345. So this right here is what you would normally use in space on smaller crafts, but unfortunately it just doesn't have enough thrust to work on this particular design. But this is absolutely awesome. This is actually something that you may consider using from now on, because not only is it very powerful, specifically it has a lot of power for a smaller craft, but it's also very efficient, and so this is what we're going to be using. And the thing is, I actually thought these things work in the air. I thought I actually can use these just like I use Rapier engines, but unfortunately they don't. They do need to have this type of tank, the rocket tank. So this is what we're going to be doing. Let's actually choose a cabin. I might as well choose a prettier one, Mark 1 cockpit, and we're going to use Valentina for this. So let's just switch here, and goodbye Jebediah. Hello Valentina. And what we're going to be doing is, let's start from scratch. Let's put a tank right here. Now, from experience, I discovered that I may need to put another one, just because. Don't ask why, but you need to have a little bit more fuel here. And the rest is really similar, so I'm gonna, I mean, there's so many, oh yeah, I forgot to, the important part, and then put the spike on right here. So this is actually already a feasible rocket, but unfortunately, even though it has quite a lot of delta V, it's not going to be enough for you to get into space. So we're gonna make this into space plane. So let's actually add, we're gonna add a few. I think I'm gonna actually add. I used to use these liquid fuel tanks because I was only gonna be using the ramjet engines, but now I've decided just because I do need extra fuel, I'm gonna use the actual fuel tanks. So this is normal fuel tank that has rocket fuel in it. I'm gonna place it just like this, making this into sort of like a Y-wing from Star Wars. And at the end of this, we're just going to add 2 ramjets. Ta-da! Then the rest is essentially just adding necessary components like wheels and air intakes. And you don't really need to put too many air intakes anymore because even if you put a lot, you still won't be able to air hog. But I'm still gonna put quite a few here just because I like the looks. I kind of like to have these ridgy looking air intakes that make my crafts look a little bit more cool than crafts that don't have them. And then on the bottom I'm going to place one more because that's where my wheel is going to be, my landing gear. And no, that's too far, don't like that. And lastly, we might as well put one on top because that's just proportions. And lastly, we're going to put wings, and we're also going to add control, what do you call them? Control panels, control wings, basically, so that our craft behaves in the atmosphere. Now, I actually like this addition right here, a big ass space plane tail fin. This is my new favorite wing. It has a lot of control surface lift rating. Sorry, what did I say? No, it's a control surface, but it also has a high lift rating. So, in other words, you don't actually have to place wings and control panels. You can just place these things. And I kind of like to do the X-wing style because you do need to have a lot of lift rating for these types of crafts because they're quite heavy. So I kind of like to do this. This is my favorite new style. Well, not so new, but basically this is the wings that we didn't have before. But here you see there's the control panel right here that will be able to that will allow you to control the craft much easier. And just for the vertical control, we're gonna add a few more winglets right here. And last but not least, the landing gear. So make sure you place it somewhere where it is going to be really straight, because if it's not straight, your craft will get all wobbly and out of control, and you'll most likely crash it. So here we go. And just because I do need some extra lift, I'm gonna add 2 more wings right here in front, making this kind of a cool arrow looking craft. Alright, perfect. So this is almost ready to go. I'm just double checking that I didn't forget anything. I need to place these engines here. This is going to activate later. And looks like we're set. Looks like we're ready to go. So let's see if this flies. Let's give it a name. And this is going to be toroidal. That sounds horrible. Toroidal SSTO. No, just SSTO. Let's call it just SSTO. And I'm gonna put Valentina's name in there. Alright, perfect. So let's see how this goes. And ready, steady, and let's go. Perfect. So looks like the wings are just barely not touching the ground, which is just excellent. Okay, let's see if we fly. 90. Oh no. Oh no, not enough lift. I think there's not enough lift. Okay, perfect. We're kind of flying. That's good enough. Now, it does get wobbly. This is mostly because of the new atmospheric effect. So this is going to be quite a lot of wobble because I am going super fast. And I'm also a little bit on the crazy side with Valentina being super hyper right now. And so let's just get into the upper atmosphere. And what I like to do, because I don't have much patience for these things, and because air hogging doesn't really exist anymore, I like to just, blast my engines full power, 45 degrees, or approximately 45 degrees and get to as high of apoapsis as possible before I switch to the toroidal engine, which is right here. Toroidal engine will help us get into the final orbit. And here we go. Here we go. The speed is going to start increasing dramatically after about 10 kilometers. And at this point, we may even start burning. So if you actually don't have enough angle here, if you're going at a slightly lower angle, you'll start experiencing burning. And this may destroy some of your parts, unfortunately. Which is once again why air hogging is a bit of an issue right now. And I'm sure there is possibly a way to do it somehow. I just have not discovered how to do it safely. So instead, we're going to be doing this for now. So alright, so here we go. And as you can see, my speed started to decrease, which is why I should probably switch to toroidal engine as soon as my other engines shut down. There we go. And now. And now. There we go. Perfect. So this will now hopefully take us a little bit higher. We're gonna wait for this to get to 70 kilometers. And after this, what I'm going to do is essentially what we always do, where I'm going to transfer the fuel from these tanks to my main tank. And at the same time, I'm going to... oh boy, it's not controlling very well. And at the same time, we're also going to re-engage this engine and finish our orbital circularization. But right now, you can see the TWR here is just over 1. So that means we are going to get into space, but it could be higher. But usually, one toroidal engine is just enough for a smaller craft. If your craft is not too big, you should be able to get there get to space quite successfully. Okay, it's not 70 yet. Need to get a little bit higher. Trying to raise my nose, but it's really, really difficult. Mostly because things have changed. The things I was used to, like the atmospheric controls and being able to do certain things in the game, are so much more difficult now. And I like that. I kind of like the new challenge. But let's just wait for this to get to 70 kilometers, and then we're going to stop our engines and transfer fuel. And okay, good. And right about now. Perfect. 1 minute 26 seconds. I have 1 minute to transfer this fuel to my tank right here. All of this fuel, because we don't really need it anymore, and if we have any leftovers, we'll just use them up later. And this will allow me to essentially finish my orbiting maneuver. And because look at that, I now have just under 1,000 delta V. I thought it would be more, but that's okay. Okay, so for this maneuver, what we need to do is burn for how many meters? Delta V? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's make this just perfectly circular if we can. Good enough. And 676. So that means we have about 300 delta V left to return to Kerbin and possibly even land. Hey, we might even land. We'll try to land. Let's try to land. Alright, so in about 33 seconds. No, sorry, in about 10 seconds. So actually, right about now, I'm going to start burning. This will circularize my orbit. And this will be our first official SSTO launch in version 1.02. A very simple craft, not the smallest craft I could make. I'm sure someone out there is going to come up with something a lot more original and a lot smaller as well. But you know what? This works. And I finally got to use those toroidal... That's such an ugly word, toroidal. Toroidal engines. They finally have a purpose, because now they're... I mean, this is way, way more efficient than a lot of other engines. You may even start using these a lot more for some other crafts as well. Okay, so I need to start slowing down a little bit. 70 meters, 60, and 20. And space-ish. Space-ish. 73 kilometers, 66. Okay, so I may want to circularize it here. But essentially this is it. This is basically the orbit. This is orbity enough. Still have 300 meters per second left, which is just enough to deorbit and so on and so forth. But you know what? We need to do E.V.E. We need to do some E.V.E. We need to talk to our report. And what does it say here? Let's see. Let's find out what it says. Oh, I didn't read it actually. Crew report. There's no crew report. Can I see the E.V.E. report again? You record your observations about the situation. Okay, it doesn't say anything. Why not? Why does it not say anything? It doesn't say anything good. Alright, you know what? What is she holding on to? Okay, that works. Let go and go swim around in space. Let's do a report here if we can. Alright, you know what? Forget the E.V.E. report. Let's just observe how beautiful this is. And look how happy she is. She's the happiest female astronaut in Kerbal Space Center or program. Even though she's the only female astronaut.